Hello and welcome back to my channel. Evening, ladies and gents. I thought I would wear my Mayor Daily hat for this evening's episode. I'm speaking of Mayor Richard M. Daley. He used to wear a hat similar to this. I have scant occasion to don such a hat. But lately I have been watching a new YouTuber that I've found who goes by the name of Texas Paul. And I notice he always has a hat on. I think folks from Texas feel more at ease with themselves when they have a proper hat on. So I thought I would try it out and see how it goes for tonight. Other than that, this video has kind of fallen apart because I had some plans in mind that are not going to work out. Now, I flirted with the idea of titling this video, How to Be a Better BookTube Watcher. That would be kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of a joking title. The answer, of course, would be don't project. And I'm thinking about a number of videos I've done lately that have called forth responses that seem kind of out of the blue in a way. And I thought I would talk a little bit about that. And I don't want to single any single commenter out. I just find this stuff interesting. Now, I will start by saying that a couple days ago, I'm not good with time, okay? I just popped up a little short video. If a thought comes into my head and I happen to have the iPad or the phone near me, I'll just pull it out and spout for the brief moment it takes. And if it seems like I said what was on my mind within the short duration, I will just post it as a short video. And I did one in response to a comment that I had. And basically I said, I referred to Timothy Snyder, the historian. He had a book 8 years ago titled On Tyranny, which I bought. And he has a new book out titled On Freedom, which I have not bought, but I will try to get into it. But he set forth 8 years ago a number of precepts for trying to deal with an autocratic regime as it was trying to establish itself. And one of those was do not obey in advance. We have seen with this current presidency of Trump, some of the world's wealthiest men already rushing to obey in advance. And you see examples of it here and there. But my little video said, do not obey in advance, but likewise, do not suffer in advance. Do not feel anguish in advance of something that has not happened yet, that you suspect may be happening, or that even logic dictates must happen. And then that led to the further point, do not get mad in advance. Our politicians for a number of decades now have really encouraged people to get mad. And they've encouraged this idea that getting mad is macho and it's manly. as opposed to the more traditional way of looking at things, such that maintaining one's cool was manly. Cool pose, keep it cool. In Thailand, they would say Mai Pen Rai. Don't get all bungied out of shape just because stuff is going on. And that was the end of that. But it occurred to me that one could also add to that list of things that ought not to be done in advance. Do not fear. Do not fear in advance. And my video talked, I think my last one yesterday, I'll link it in the description box, talked a little bit about such. One must not be oblivious. One must not look away from potential threats. One should be mindful. And that is not to say that one should allow fear to paralyze oneself. And in fact, one should not click on the fear button at all if you can avoid doing it. There is no need to dwell on that. So I said that because one commenter on this video or one of these videos said, "Stop whining and being afraid." Sounds almost like something that my father might have said. But being cognizant of repercussions to things should not be equated with being afraid. And in my case, I exhausted the fear mechanism fairly early on, speaking as far as my writing goes. I'll read you the early poem. I've read this in another one. When I took on the George H.W. Bush aura, I guess you would say. This is titled The Bush Smear. The eternal squandered Bush soul dwells among the nameless middle hells. There's no repository else. While hers above in highest heaven, Anita Hills, all sins forgiven, bides there unremorseful even. Thus on earth is fate decided, heaven's mandate not derided, the Father's justice has presided. So that's from Embodiment and Release. Slight flub up of the tongue, but I will leave it stand. And at the time I felt fearful. I am sure at the time that I was young, I was trying to make my way, I was sending things out as submissions and that kind of thing. So I would imagine that it was sent out. I have no clear memories of this. At one point, I had a log that I kept because a friend said, and he got it straight from the mouth of William Stafford. What you got to do is have an envelope and have your batch of poems, and you put them in the envelope and send them out. And then when they come back, you take them, you put them in another envelope and send it out. And I tried that for a while, a very brief while, but I logged what I sent out. So I don't know if it was sent out, but it was not taken. But you heard the poem, and the poem still, at least 30 years later, still stands. And so I would say from that the reason it was not perhaps given much consideration was because the editor of the journal that happened to come across it may have felt some fear. And I am just talking about maybe the fear of feeling ridiculous among his peers or something. I don't know. I don't try to look into or project into other people what their motivations or what they might even be feeling. I don't speculate on that stuff. And that idea of projecting is the key word that I would say to viewers of BookTube videos. Do not project into the person that you are watching on screen. As in this case, projecting the fear. It is not to say that I have not felt fear in my life. One learns how to compartmentalize. As I say, when I first wrote that poem and was first sending it out, I felt fear, probably. My third book, this was my first book, had a poem, and I've done something about that as well, about the collector's office where I was working at the time, and it led to me getting removed from that job, and that was kind of devastating. But you know what? I got over it. I somehow went on with my life. And then I was going to read you my fourth book, I think, was the big poem, the Requiem, big poem. Now, it should not have said a poem on the cover. The designer insisted on putting that up there, and I caved. I said, okay, that's fine. That's what one does. And I know that I went further into detail about George Herbert Walker Bush in this thing. And I thought I was going to read you that passage. I can't find it in here, and I'm flipping through and flipping through. There's a lot of philosophy, I guess you would say, in here that is probably outdated. I don't memorize these things. I have no idea where it would be. Would it be at the front? Would it be at the tail end? I just don't know. I'm pretty sure that it's in here and not in the follow-up poem, the Resurgiad. I say follow-up, but that's not the next big poem 5 years later. So this is written 27 years ago, and I was going to read that to you, but I can't find it. And I don't, as a rule, reread my own poetry. Something like this I can just flip through and find, but to find something in here, I would actually have to read it, and I do not care to do it. Poems open themselves to interpretation, and one interpretation that you could put upon this title was the Requiem for My Country, and hence the place that George Herbert Walker Bush earned for himself in the book. So, stop whining and being afraid. I suspect it was a young person who wrote that. Anybody who has lived a certain number of years has lived to see people really enduring or really struggling with the hardships of age. Know that really troublous stuff, it comes as just a matter of time, unless you are exceedingly lucky. And at my stage of life, I look ahead to that kind of stuff with greater trepidation than any kind of repercussion to some kind of words that I had written. I mentioned some cases in yesterday's video, such as Aristophanes, who the government tried to prove that he was not a citizen. Now we are seeing a lot of people getting deported. You see people, there's been a number of videos already, a guy in the vote for Trump shirt getting deported. Donald, help me. And oh, my wife, how can you deport my wife? She's a good little wife. You're sending her back to Venezuela. That kind of thing. I mean, we expected that. We knew that that was going to come. And of course, a paramount use of this whole foreign business will be to turn it against persons who were born U.S. citizens. We know that. It's inescapable that such things will happen. And say something like that happens, it will be a monumental hassle. But what isn't a monumental hassle nowadays? So, another one, I don't know if, I don't remember now who, I just wrote out the little quotes. Trump made you quit writing? And I had to, even though I thought I was being clear, I had to go back in and recount, explain that. And I said, I was a playwright. I showed the one play that I have, which is published at lulu.com. And I said I knew at the time that Trump was elected 8 years ago that it was kind of a signal that the acceptance of free speech was on the wane, was being done away with. And in terms of the strictures of our government, it is gone, as far as I can tell. And that rendered the style of play that I wrote and had written up until that time invalid or impossible, because it required an audience that was capable of assimilating, capable of responding to ideas freely spoken, political ones particularly. Other ideas, sure, that's a different thing. And I specifically contrasted that style of comedy with the more popular and more common style, the comedy of errors, the romantic comedy. Even the Athenian, the Attic comedy softened towards the end after the population had voted away the democracy and installed the 30 tyrants and all of that. The comedy softened. And were I to write plays now, I would have to come up with a different style, and I doubt that I can do that. But I did not give up writing. I did not give up writing poetry, and I have numerous subsequent books. I think the last one was done 2 years ago or 1 year ago. I think I'm done now. I think I am retired. I think the thing that these acolytes, these worshipers of Donald Trump, fail to grasp is that Donald Trump is just piddly shit. He is nothing more than that. It was a real heinous president, George H.W. Bush, that set the ball of this demise of democracy in motion. And I was fortunate to be on the scene and take him on, take that on. And we'll see how this stands. As I say, I can't bear to look at it myself. But no reason to suppose it won't stand as well as that. This Trump is just a two-bit actor. His type is not at all unique in the history of the world. And what he and his cronies are doing, this is not the first time. I think it was my book, Against Holy War. It starts out with a poem that says, "'Tis easy to tear down a thing, to, I don't know, to something and something, to maim and kill, but something, to build something, whatever, that takes skill." The book is Against Holy War. You'll have to find that one out for yourself. That was referring to the destruction of those giant Buddhas, but it refers to anything. Keeping a government such as this going is a labor. Maybe a labor of love, but is certainly a labor. Whereas to destroy it, to pull it apart, to sell pieces off, that doesn't require any particular brilliance, skill, charisma, personality, so forth. That is easy. And that is what we are privy to now. And that is why my writing career very much is over at this point. All of the action was occurring in the past 30 years or so. This is just the culmination. So, Trump made you quit writing. Well, that explains that. You endorse violence against America. One of those odd sort of things projected into something. I mean, what did I say? Because I did a video about the books by B. Traven, and I said those indigenous Americans enslaved on the mahogany plantation, deprived of any other recourse, turned to violence, and violence may indeed be necessary to take down a tyrant. That is what I said, and that's twisted into you endorse violence against America. And we know the party that endorses violence. We know the party that committed violence of an insurrection, killing numerous policemen, trying to murder Nancy Pelosi, etc. Later on, her husband was hit by one of these party members with a hammer or something. We know the party that advocates and espouses violence. That has not been my party. you hate some guy, Trump, because he is not you. I mean, as I say, hate, my hate was reserved for a bigger fish, George H.W. Bush. And you wish that you could elevate Trump to the level of meriting my hatred. Oh, this was the odd one. This coming from a guy who is pro-Israel. And that's an odd one. And all I can think is it's happened for a long time. There's been this odd sort of phenomenon. People who are not Jewish will sometimes mistake me for Jewish. It's happened a good, I don't know, 3 or 4 times that I can recall. And people who themselves are Jewish do not mistake me for Jewish. It's kind of odd. On one occasion, I remember I was asked, "You're not Jewish, are you?" And that was. I'll just give you the anecdote. I was hunting for an apartment, and I talked to the landlord, and he had some things going on with his eye that was really strange. Not that has nothing to do with it. And then I thought, well, I will knock on some doors and talk to some tenants and see what this guy is like as a landlord. And I got one woman, and she turned me off on the building right there. She said, "You're not Jewish, are you?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, I am. And that man's a kike. And I can say that because I am Jewish." And she went on. But she did not mistake me for Jewish. But I suppose that once again, somebody projected into the video and said, "Oh, this guy looks kind of Jewish, so maybe he's Jewish." I don't know. As I say, I've known a fair number of Jewish people in my life, and none of them ever made that mistake. I mean, even just on first howdy do. But whatever. You are so phony, and that's the kind of thing. Well, I can't argue against that. Somebody says you're so phony, that's fine. And you think you are such a good man. And my response there, of course, was that I referred to the columnist Sidney J. Harris, who wrote for the Chicago Daily News. And he said, I don't have to be a dentist in order to know that a dentist has done a bad job. And I said, I don't need to be a good guy to understand that Donald Trump and many of his Republican ilk are bad people, bad men. And I will take it even a step further. I do not have to be a particularly good person to know that if you voted for Donald Trump, you are not a good person. You are a bad person. Now, I'm not saying that you can't change. You can. Even St. Paul fell down on the road to Damascus and changed. So, yeah, you can change. But when you were casting that vote, you were not a good human being. You were a moral miscreant, okay? But be that as it may, it's just a little thing. This is not new. And then I was going to read my thing about George Herbert Walker Bush. As I say, if anything, you can take this book to be about the falling apart, but there's just some pretty awful philosophy in there. And I, of course, would prefer people go to my second poem. Now, if that one was 27 years old, this one is 22 years old. And this is designed to give a person a course to build themselves back up. And I suppose I should explain that a little bit. When we write poetry, we often are not talking about the past. We are often building a scaffolding, so to speak, for ourselves for the future. And then other people can utilize the same scaffolding if it serves them in the situation in which they find themselves. And that may be a rarity. There may be precious few individuals to whom that would apply. That might be one of the things which accounts for poetry's slim audience. It is not for me to concern myself with. So, since I couldn't find the passage in the Requiem that talked about Bush, and I think this one may have a little something about Karl Rove, because he was the slander master. I think it does, but I'm not going to hunt for that either. I thought I would just read a little bit from T.S. Eliot. I said to my soul, be still, and wait without hope. For hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, for love would be love of the wrong thing. Yet there is faith, but the faith and the love and the hope are all in the waiting. Wait without thought, for you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness the dancing. And I thought that kind of applies, taking it back to the idea of fear. One must wait without fear. Any human being is subject to the various emotions, I guess you would say. And given the right situation, they will come out. But it is well not to fear in advance, just as it is well not to obey in advance. Did we all fear in advance, human culture would be much less rich. I showed my books by Cicero the other day, and I should have opened them to the title page. This is the second volume, the Philippics. John David at his channel has talked about Cicero a number of times and refers to him as a gas bag. Indeed, he was. And he was not particularly a courageous man. But in the end, and particularly in this set of, here's the first book, in this set of 14 speeches which he gave, he decided that he was not going to stand by and watch the democracy be transformed into a monarchy. He was not going to stand for the crowning of Mark Antony. Do you think he was unaware of what the potential consequences might be? Of course he understood. These men in power do not like to hear the truth. That's been pretty roundly established. I think somebody, maybe it was Anne Applebaum I was just listening to the other day, was talking about the Nazis and said that everything that Hitler implemented, he tried to couch in some kind of phrase that this is for the good of the German people. This is for the good. They don't want to hear otherwise. as I say, my truths apply. Even, I would say, the condemnation which condemned the invasion of Iraq. Bury this generation in the ground and let its names go unremembered. Even that book refers to a bygone generation at this time. So I am not so fearful of any kind of direct retribution from, say, Trump or his camp, even though we know that he wants adherents to his movement to commit violence. We know that, against liberals, etc., of which I would say I am a liberal. I don't think I am a member of the Democratic Party, but in Chicago, one must vote in the Democratic primary if one is to have one's vote count for anything, and so that is what I have done. But I don't know. I've pulled the Democratic ballot when I've had to vote in a primary election, but I don't think that ever required pledging allegiance to any kind of party. But regardless, I am a liberal. You go to, where is it, Westminster Abbey, and you can see graven on some stones that the greatest compliment that could be given to any man was liberality of mind. And yet they've tried to turn it into a slur, be that as it may. Trump is no Cleon. So, I think I will leave that there. Just stuff, and if I drew your quote out, it's not intended as anything personal, but I've been making videos for probably nearing 2 years now, specifically as a booktuber. Now I am moving more into the sphere of politics a little bit, because I feel that that is where I can perhaps be more useful. My reviewing a book is not going to help anybody. My analyzing a sonnet is not going to help anybody. You can find much better teachers for that. I am not in any way, shape, or form a teacher. I've also said that I am not particularly invested in the system that we have. As a writer of poetry, it has been my job to be aware of things, to be aware of the will for free speech going away and taking it into account. I, of course, am a product of the era when that ideal was held sacrosanct. It is no longer held sacrosanct. That doesn't mean that I can't still exercise it. And contrary to what I had said 8 years ago, that is what I choose to do, at least for now, on this channel. Cicero was very much invested in the democracy. He did not want to see the system overthrown. I would prefer not to see the system overthrown, but I would also rather see it changed into something that is equitable and fair, which, as it has stood, does not apply. So, for the time being, I will just continue on making my videos. I try to speak clearly. James at Quaint and Curious Volumes says that I talk too much or too slow or at length, ad infinitum. That may have been what he said. And indeed, what am I at? 41 minutes. I always urge people, if they feel that they must watch one of my videos, put it on double the speed, and it'll be a much more comely experience. It will be at least somewhat tolerable, rather than hearing me drone on in this slow, lugubrious monotone. So, if something ever leads me to find that passage in the Requiem, then maybe I will come back and read it. Sorry, it blew my plans for this video out of the water, but I still managed to talk for 42 minutes or 21 minutes if you listen to it in double speed. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.